And we are live. Hi, Zach. How are you?
Hello.
So you're from Boston?
Yes, I am.
How's my pronunciation?
Killing it. Absolutely spectacular.
So I'd just like to welcome everyone back to Pride in the Living Room Jewmos edition. Quick reminder for those who need one. Pride in the Living Room was founded by the Israeli LGBT task force Agudah in memory of the 2009 Tel Aviv Gay Center shooting and the Pride Parade stabbing in Jerusalem in 2015. And Agudah founded this project to offer a voice and a stage to LGBT Jews from across the world to encourage empathy and community. So all of that said, it is my pleasure to welcome Zach to the stage. Zach, over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to first extend a massive, massive thank you to you, Jared. I have been really lucky to have sort of been plugged into this awesome network of wonderful queer Jewish folks, and more on that later. But I really want to sort of do wide lens, and then we can sort of narrow in and talk about sort of this overarching question, which is like, who are you? And where does identities sort of intersect, and sort of how that affects my life as like a 21st century teenager. I will preface that by saying that I am sort of the least teenagery teen you will ever meet. And those around me will definitely vouch for that. I have been an old soul for a very long time, as so I've been told, if you're familiar with that expression. And so yes, I'm 16. I'm going to be a junior in high school, which is sort of um, I'm going to be a junior in high school. I'm starting 11th grade at Thayer Academy, which is a small prep school in New England, which is where I'm from, Boston. So yes, I was born on November 14th of 2003, starting right at the very beginning. And what's lovely about Boston and New England is that it is sort of this spectacular queer hub, but we also face a real contrasting, very religious Irish Catholic and Catholic communities here, which from a very young age led me into a very sort of heteronormative society, and a society in which it was a very sort of linear track. You talk about like the concept of queer time and how sort of that arc of adolescence is inherently different. And I think I really felt that. With that in mind, I was an empathetic, sort of friendly young boy, which was sort of jarring to people at times, I would say. I think that we in America in particular perpetuate really strong ideals and sort of beliefs of what masculinity is and what boyhood looks like and what that sort of period is meant to be. So beginning very early on, I went to a Montessori school, which for those of you who don't know is a program in which you are sort of set into a world of learning and said, what makes most sort of, what are you drawn to academically? What do you want to go to? What do you sort of seek out? So as sort of this young, happy kid, I sort of drew to things that just sort of made sense. I also now have dyslexia. I've always had dyslexia, but going to a Montessori program, it was really conducive to sort of being like, I'm not going to do reading. Who needs reading? It's an excessive thing. So I was able to sort of focus on the things I was good at and not which I was not, which would later become a sort of larger theme in how I handled certain things. And I think it's important to plant that seed sort of early for me, that sort of in my childhood, I was really good at a couple of things and sort of lackluster in others. But through my dyslexia and through my sort of academic troubles, I had that sort of otherness feeling. And I sort of cope with that by being really outgoing. My friends frequently joke that I can talk to a tree and have a really fulfilling conversation. And that sort of came from that period. Now, bringing in sort of the queerness, I was a baseball player, believe it or not. I played like baseball and soccer and was sort of firmly in those boxes. And it was around the age of 8 or 9 for me when I just felt miserable. I just didn't like it. I was always really flamboyant. I loved people and I loved color. And I vividly remember this gloomy gray day on the baseball field and thinking, my rainbow soul is so much brighter. There is sort of a vibrancy that I'm just not feeling. And that's not to say those communities aren't vibrant, they just didn't fit me. So I began to move into a sort of more artsy, more theater-based, more musical lens. I am a classically trained violinist and vocalist out of the New England Conservatory. I went to the New England Conservatory's preparatory program starting very, very young, around 8. So what was awesome is I sort of had this track to queerness, if that makes sense. It was a sort of group of people that really enjoyed culture, but it was young is the other thing. And so I sort of broke away from baseball and moved, and this like sporty heteronormative side, and was moving towards arts. But at the same time, I hadn't had a teacher that believed in me as a student. And I talk about academia because I love learning. I'm one of those people, and I'm sure some of you at home can resonate with this. I just loved learning, but I couldn't sort of find my way in. And so it was in 3rd or 4th grade when I switched out of that Montessori program to the public school and began thinking about applying into THAIR. Pardon my jumping around. So I sort of phrased this period as a really transitional moment for me. I was going from a very loose Montessori program into a very rigid public school program, which was great for me academically, but it proved really challenging socially for me. As a young queer person, I found a very hyper masculine, hyper sporty society, which I, as a young thespian, was really interested in distancing from. It was sort of not my thing, but academically I needed it. So I then, fast forward through a couple years of public school, I then applied in to THAIR, which is the prep school I go to now, which has been so incredibly wonderful, but also really challenging. You know, as a queer person in an Irish Catholic, predominantly Catholic, like religious sort of, it's predominantly religious, but it's not religiously affiliated school. And that was a hard thing for me. I was told, the teachers were really wonderful, but it sort of felt like a regression. It felt like, again, I didn't like grappling with those questions. I began with saying like who are you? That question, that sort of capstone question, which really led me through years. And the sort of side piece I'll say about that is that question of who are you is one that I continue to grapple with, but it is that grappling that I've become more comfortable with. So in this 6th through 8th grade middle school period, it was a really big, uncomfortable thing. It was like, oh, grappling, no. That's not for me. I'm sort of in my theater lane, but I couldn't be queer because, and we as humans often can sort of find a way to make anything make sense. I've found we can self-soothe any notion. And so that made sense to me. But as I was growing up, it was really clear that I was othered. It was really clear that I wasn't into those things. And from a very young age, sort of positive queer influences in my life said, oh, let us know when Zach comes out. And of course I sort of brushed it off and was haha, whatever. But in Boston, there were numerous people that said, oh, let us know when Zach comes out. So I was sort of grappling with this through middle school. And in sort of the middle of middle school, I had one teacher who believed in me. And I think it's a really funny thing because I think as a teacher now myself to 7th and 8th graders in that sort of age group, I couldn't imagine not believing in students. But I had one teacher who said, oh, Zach has something special. And for me, that feeling of Zach has something special and the way that she was able to sort of welcome me into learning was really transformative. It was a moment where in that random 7th grade advisee, this one teacher turned my path from being this sort of not academic, not athletic, not arts kid and really was able to hone in on what Zach was. And for the first time, I felt a pulling force to say, what is your identity? What are these things you're grappling with? What are words to begin to describe how you're feeling? Not that I was searching for another box, because I wasn't. I was just sort of beginning to be brought into the world of grappling in a more forward way. I think throughout my life, as I've sort of said, it's always been grappling. It's always that feeling of this world isn't perfectly made for you. But there are also a lot of reasons why I have privilege and a lot of different reasons why I am really lucky to be where I'm in. So it's this funny sort of mental puzzle, but I digress. So back to that sort of middle school period, around 7th and 8th grade, I began to sort of find my group of humans and find that like je ne sais quoi about me that made sense to sort of begin to become my truest self. And I do want to say that I'm still working on that as a teenager and as a person who's sort of, I very openly say that we're all works in progress. I think there's a real humanity with that. And so through that sort of middle school, high school period, I was really coming into my own. And I had come out in late 8th grade, which was really wonderful. And I was very, very lucky to have an awesome home base. My parents were great. And that was something that really made it exponentially easier for me and exponentially more comfortable to grapple. I think we often feel, and I certainly felt, that grappling was trying to figure out who you are. That grappling was unnatural or sort of an odd thing to do because we live in a society in which we feel like there are these people that have these like perfectly straight paths. And I frequently say that if the path isn't curvy, it isn't fun. And you need, life is sort of, the life is complicated deal of that. So moving forward, I sort of came into high school, and the summer in between my 8th grade and 9th grade year, all of my friends were sort of finding internships or finding different things that were beyond camp, that were sort of the next step up. And this same teacher in 7th grade that had given me the boost into academia said, well, what do you love? In sort of a nonchalant way. And it was a question that really resonated with me, like, what do you love? And at the same time, I was grappling with, who do I love? She was sort of very plainly said, well, what do you love doing? What brings you joy? And I said, oh, that's really easy. Being Jewish. Being Jewish brings me joy. Being Jewish is something I love. So I had emailed our clergy. I go to Temple Beth Elohim, which is a large Reform congregation. And I work there. I serve as the student intern now. And I'm about to start, I just finished my first year and I'm about to go into my second year as the student intern there, which is really wonderful. And I had sort of emailed our cantors and said, would you ever want a intern? Would you ever want to fly on the wall? I'll organize bookshelves. I just want to like be in this room and be in this headspace to sort of like try out being in a synagogue space. I had always, beginning in 3rd grade, I'd gone to Hebrew school and loved it. I was one of those kids that really enjoyed Hebrew school, but couldn't find sort of the next thing for me. And they had said, yeah, shockingly, they had said, yes, we'll have an intern. And it was in this time that I felt like I was finding my niche, right? I was becoming this intern and I was out and sort of beginning to hold those qualities dear. And so I began interning, and the summer flew by and I was starting high school. And at the end of the summer, I had said, I was in clergy meeting and I had said, well, this has been so great. I love you all so much. Bye-bye. As sort of, and I didn't realize I had sort of phrased it open-endedly, but in reflection, I did. And they had said, actually, why don't you stay for the school year? And which was such an incredible joy. So that, yes, right? Totally. I was just ecstatic. And to be with 5 clergy and to get to sort of be their right hands and be with them has been such an incredible joy. So that was sort of the like cementing of the beginning of my Jewish identity. And I tell that story of becoming an intern because it was so imperfect. It was this kid who was just in 8th grade. I was just trying to figure out who I was And the question, who and what do you love, was one that really struck a chord, and it led me to this awesome path. So now I'm in high school, I'm interning, and it's this awesome combination. It's been going on. And what's been so wonderful is that through my work with Judaism, I've been able to cherish my voice. I've been able to love my voice and begin to really become confident in who I am and my ideas, if that makes sense. It was a really solidifying experience. Just the experience of having clergy saying, try to lead a Micha Mocha one week, and giving me the space and room to grow as a prayer leader, but also as a person, left an incredible mark on me. In that 3-month summer, I became more confident to sing. And this wasn't overnight, these were concepts that had sort of always been building, but it was through this sort of space, this like sacred, safe space. In the LGBTQ community, we talk about safe spaces a lot. And it was this sacred and safe space that just sort of left me room to grow and to blossom and to focus on my blooming, if you will. So what was so wonderful about that is that I was able to take these Jewish concepts and bring it back to my prep school. So over the past few years, I actually just had a plan that was just approved for 3 years of LGBTQ education to be implemented for our 8th, 9th, and 10th grade students. Every 8th, 9th, and 10th grade student is getting a curriculum that I have had a hand in writing. And I sort of, in reflecting on that process of getting that plan through really recently, I really used some Jewish values. And it was really through the strength and the confidence I got from Jewish song leading and Jewish experience that allowed me to sort of go to this sort of closed mind prep school and say, hey, let's burst this open. Why are we having these beliefs? And I also had the religious knowledge at this point. I had taken classes on Leviticus 18. I had taken classes on these sort of passages. And so I had the incredible, it was sort of my superpower to be able to say, like, actually, let's look at these things. What are these things saying? I had the knowledge to pick apart the religious sort of constructs and the things people drew from religion to be closed-minded. And so I sort of came in and said, how about we just change everything? And so it's been a process of a good 2.5 years now of me sort of working on opening up our bylaws and doing all these things. And just now we're getting to a point as a school where we can begin to call ourselves fully inclusive to gay people and to LGBTQ people, which has been not just me. I've had an awesome group of faculty and students who sort of said, yeah, let's run with this. But the intersectionality, in sort of reflecting on that period, the intersectionality of my Judaism and my leading on my queer life and on the education side was something that really has been fascinating to me. So that is sort of the like broad arc of Zach's life thus far. And I make a point to say thus far because in interning, one of my favorite things has been working with our older congregants. And I was just asked the other day, well, Zach, why do you like working with the older congregants? And don't get me wrong, I love song leading. If you need a song leader, if you need a guy to lead a couple nigunim, I'm your guy. I love that space. But I have found a really awesome group of older people. And I was asked just recently, Zach, why do you like this group? And I said, and I continue to say that it's the bookend effect. By working with our oldest congregants as someone who is a teenager, it has given me the opportunity to reframe and look at everything that is upcoming in a really new light. And as I sort of approach this second year of interning and the second to last year of high school, what excites me in this moment is the world of knowledge I know nothing about. It's the fact that I have all of these years to continue to acquire Jewish knowledge. and secular knowledge. And it has been through sort of working with our oldest and our youngest to sort of frame the middle differently. And another amazing thing that I get to do is I get to provide queer resources for those at our temple. We work with Cachet, which is an awesome organization to sort of make sure we're being really inclusive. And I've been really lucky as someone in a religious circle to get to be queer and Jewish and live both fully and happily in the same breath. And that's a gift I'm really, really grateful and blessed to have. So yes, that is sort of the larger story.
Thank you so much, Zach, for talking us through your incredible story. I have some questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Uh, Something that you touched on a few times, which you mentioned as almost a theme of your life thus far, is who am I? You know, this constant searching for identity and um, it sounds to me like, at least in part, you've now found that you're a proud gay man, you're a proud Jew, and you're able to embrace both aspects of your life. So I'm really interested about the about this LGBT curriculum that you've in some way helped implement.
Yeah.
What I mean, there are lots of people who are LGBT and Jewish, and they sort of live they just live their lives. But you decided to take it a step further and to take on this sort of activism, change agent role. So what led you to want to use your voice in that way?
Really wonderful question. I I felt like the system I felt like the system wasn't serving everyone the way it should have been, in a sense. I went to this middle school culture that academically was just amazing for me. It like cracked my brain open and made me question so much. And I was getting so little of the social side, the queer knowledge. And so when I, after interning, became really comfortable in my skin, I really felt that I had to go back and like fix this. I felt sort of an urgency in my bones that said, I can't graduate knowing that this program isn't 10 times better. And I think that's sort of who I am, but I also had wonderful, wonderful teachers, especially in our clergy, who said, if there's something that isn't serving you, if there's something that isn't making sense in your life, go change the world. I think one of the awesome Jewish values is that we are a group of people that are so active in social activism. We are really a vocal group, and that was something that I sort of held close to my heart and sort of ran with it. And to sort of answer your question, why did I do it? It was I just saw a necessity, and I felt like these kids weren't being served. And so I did a lot of research. I went to other programs. I went to religious programs. I looked at other schools in the area who had LGBTQ programs and asked students and faculty, what is working, what isn't? I knew the gravity of what I was dealing with also, as a person with anxiety and as a person who had a harder time grappling with that question. I really wanted to do this right once. I really wanted to say, here's my plan. And that's not to say it wasn't a work in progress, but I wanted to say, here's the best thing that I, Zach Gondelman, can bring to you. And it had a lot of heart in it. I really challenged our kids. The Human Rights Campaign, which is a wonderful, wonderful organization, has these maps of the US that shows you where conversion therapy is still legal in the States and where transgender healthcare is banned. And so I say to our 10th graders, and I have for the past 2 years, I put that map up and say, who likes healthcare? I really, what has been awesome about this program is saying, like, who likes learning? How would you feel if these fundamental things couldn't be taken from you? And it's a really empathy-driven curriculum, which is something that I've been really grateful that's turned out to be. It's a peer run program too, which is something that's great. So yes, it's been something that sort of, I want to encourage our kids and give our kids that sacred and safe space to grapple with who am I. I think it's a question everyone should be asking all the time because it's so hard. I remember the first time I asked a kid that, and I remember the first time I was asked that question was actually the first time I came out, one of the first times, which is why it's a question I've sort of fallen in love with, because you often get the response, oh, I'm a soccer player. That's a thing you do. Who are you? And so I love sort of tying things back to that question.
It's really amazing to hear. Yeah, thank you for sharing. So you spoke a little bit about the challenging times that you faced in your own journey, and I think that's something a lot of us can resonate with. I mean, you're 16. You've been able to do some really incredible things already, and I'm sure that there's many more that you will do in the future.
Very kind.
So whether you're having a conversation with yourself or you're having a conversation with others, maybe there are some people out there in the world who aren't on the same page as you in terms of your relationship with Judaism and your gayness.
Yeah.
So when you're having a conversation with yourself or with others, and there is some kind of disagreement, what gives you strength in those moments?
Really good question. So what gives me strength in those moments? I talked a little bit earlier about the gravity of what I do. Very early on, I've had some wonderful mentors, but one of the best things I've learned is to take life really seriously, but also not so seriously. And I hold that really dear when having those discussions. Also, they're hard discussions. Picking apart core beliefs of someone, especially in a place like America, where when you talk about masculinity in particular, I mean, coming from my place as a gay person, learning that you can still be a masculine, manly gay person was an astronomical concept to me. So what gives me strength in those moments? It is the gravity of what I'm talking about. It is a good old deep breath and a little bit of craziness. I think that I am one of those people who there are more talented people than me. There are naturally smarter people than I am. There are more gifted people than me. I'm none of those things. I'm a really hard worker. And my work ethic is something that I will work anyone to the ground. And I say that to say I'm one of those crazy people that loves what I do just enough and more than enough to keep going through those hard moments. And I've also had some really incredible discussions. And I remember being in the middle of them thinking, this person just does not get it. And then we work on it and we work on it and we work on it and we unpack it and we're disagreeing. And I'm thinking to myself, this isn't going to work. We're still going at it. And so I changed my approach. And then finally something clicks. And then there's that aha or that eureka moment that my prayer is that everyone gets to experience at least once in their lifetime. And those moments, it's the moments of, oh, now I get it, that keep me going. but not all conversations end that way. And I also understand that. So yes, it's the little bit of craziness, it's the deep breath, and it's the just keep chugging along.
So you are a proud out gay man in the Jewish spaces in which you inhabit. I'm just curious, are you an out Jewish person in the gay spaces or the LGBT spaces that you inhabit?
Awesome question again. 10 points, Jared. Yes. Yes is sort of the answer to your question. But that isn't to say that either of sort of these central pillars of my identity are easy. Neither of them have been easy. They've been rewarding. They have been spectacularly fun, and it's been a journey that I've loved taking, and I'm so excited that, like, bookend effect, I get to take classes and continue to learn and continue to grow, so it's exciting to me. But neither of those things are easy. Being an out religious person is a gift and a half. And I have a lot of friends who have had, and colleagues who've had to give up the religious side in living their true selves. And I have been so fortunate to be able to walk this world as a proud gay Jewish man. And that's really wonderful. But there are a lot of queer circles where it's been an annoying thing. Like, yes, Zach is also Jewish. How lucky for Zach. But there are times which being Jewish is very hard in America as well. And those moments frequently take me back, catch me off guard more than the queer ones do. I think as queer people in this world, we learn to build up a bit of a shell. And we learn to sort of power through the homophobia or the transphobia because we're a little bit more expecting it. But when those moments come in which anti-Semitic things arise, or you're speaking about Israeli history and someone is so vastly confused that you just don't even know where to begin, or the couple times per year where someone mentions the Holocaust and the whole class looks at you as if you're supposed to have some sort of eloquent, wonderful response on the history of the Jewish people and why that relates to the Holocaust and how it sort of all comes together. So am I out as Jewish in queer circles? Yes, but those identities are sort of very different, but they also have some real hallmark similarities, if that makes sense.
Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
So I think I have one or two more questions.
Absolutely.
So you are 16, as you've said. You were born in 2003. So you're probably the youngest person I've interviewed thus far for this project, Pride in the Living Room. And I'm intrigued to know, as someone who really grew up in the age of YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and and someone who through their teenage years has experienced same-sex marriage being legalized and conversion therapy conversations happening and trans non-binary issues being raised with this new age we're in. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that and maybe your perspective on your journey versus other people's journeys.
Absolutely. I have been really, really lucky. I have been able to grow up in a society that has out gay people. There are role models and there are Jewish queer youth in New York. There are resources and there are ways to get help. And as I said in the very beginning of this interview, I've been plugged into this fascinating gay Jewish network. And I don't take lightly the fact that I get to be 16, out, happy, and publishing an interview about my queerness. Generations and generations of queer people would have died for that, and did. So I feel grateful. I feel grateful for the generations of pioneers and people that worked to make it so that I can grow up in a world where I see people in mainstream media that are queer. I knew what drag queens were. I love drag. I get to love drag as a 16-year-old. And growing up in the age of YouTube and Facebook and TikTok, as you said, I get to grow up with this world of queerness that's around me. And recently I visited Provincetown in Massachusetts, which is sort of, which is like a gay hub of Massachusetts. And one of my close friends who's also queer said to me, "Oh, you've never been? How have you never been?" And my response was, I had that elsewhere. I had queer culture, I had queer history, I had all this stuff sort of online. So I didn't feel a draw to this place. Now, in retrospect, how spectacular of a place. Like the fact that like the concept of a gayborhood and the concept of an area that is inherently queer is such a beautiful thing. And to go there was wonderful. But I say that to say, I got access. I was given a set of keys to knowledge that is just incredible. And it also helped in those moments of questioning, in those moments of loneliness, in those moments of who am I? I was able to turn to online resources and Google things and say, am I an alien or am I a gay person, right? Like you question these things, and to be able to have those resources has been incredible.
What's next on the horizon for you?
What is next on the horizon? Really good questioning. Really good question, as I've said to all of your questions. I am really excited for this next sort of chunk of life moving into college. I talked about the bookends concept quite a few times. I just am excited and am overjoyed that I just get to be on this ride. It's exciting and nerve-wracking, and sort of what lies ahead is so much fun. But more logistically, I am beginning my second year as an intern with no end date in sight. So at the very, very earliest, I'll be stopping my internship at the end of next year. So I'm really excited for that. And I just get to continue to work with the Independent School League and with my school to sort of continue to unpack these things and work to have hard discussions. I love the hard discussion, and giving people space to grow and finding space to grow myself. I said it earlier, I am an open work in progress. I very publicly say that, and I say it with a smile on my face because I think we all are. And as we look to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we get to feel even more how much of works in progress we are, right? And so, yes, I'm really excited for the upcoming years. I'm going to begin my junior year, my 11th grade year of high school, and continue my internship and continue to sort of work on changing the world I inhabit.
Thank you so much, Zach, for spending this time with us. Yeah, I think that your story is really, really inspirational to hear. There are people in their 30s, 50s, 70s who maybe haven't had the internal conversations that you've been able to have, whether it's your internal strength or the society in which you inhabit that has, I guess, been propelled those conversations along. I was just wondering if you had any final thoughts, any final words of wisdom for us.
My words of wisdom. Loaded question for someone who's in a Jewish circle. I can go on for hours about my words of wisdom. Believe in yourself. Believe in your uniqueness and your story and the reason why you are here, and fight for it. I am a thorn in many people's sides. I love the circles I inhabit. I care about them, and that's a propelling factor to why I'm adamant on making them better. And so just believe in yourself, fight for what you believe in, and work like hell to get there. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter how talented or gifted or naturally spectacular you are. Work ethic is just the golden thing. And I'm so grateful for being here today. So thank you.
Thank you again, Zach, for being here with us at Pride in the Living Room, Jewmos edition. Here's to sharing our story in this moment and many more moments in the future. Thank you.